Not really where to start on this, other than I guess to say that my parents divorced when I was 7 years old, currently 27 male. Mom remarried and has dealt with a plethora of issues since, a lot of which stem from her upbringing and second and third marriages. Dad remarried to a woman who has spent the better part of 2 decades emotionally and physically harassing me and a couple of my other siblings. I got married around 5 years ago, and in light of events current at the time, I decided that I no longer wished to allow the stepmother to have any more control over my emotions. I cut all communication with her. I was doing well with this and felt that I had a clear conscience. After a few years of my dad guilt-tripping me into trying to establish a better relationship with the stepmother and failed attempts to do so, the floor eventually fell out. January 2018. My dad texted me, telling me that he would be blocking me because of how hurt his wife was that I did not want her to be part of my life. If I wanted to be able to have contact with him, I would have to do it through her. This sent me into a bit of an emotional tailspin, and I spent the better part of 2018 feeling sad and depressed. The willingness of a father to just cut off his son like that just crushed me, especially when I have been the child who has grown up the most and not been much of a burden. I haven't asked for money, didn't need to move back after I finished undergrad. I just bought my own home, make close to $100K, moved out a couple of states over, and have a stable family myself. I don't know where I was going with that other than to say that I have done this without help or placing any burden on my parents. My wife and I decided to start trying for a baby last year and had a wonderful baby boy in spring of 2019. As a result of this news, in the fall of 2018, I decided to try and improve relationships around me so that my son would not have to be raised in the broken family that I had been subjected to. After having to call my dad time after time from my wife's phone, he agreed to have a chat since we were making a trip back to my home state anyway. This talk ended up being extremely emotional, like overly emotional, and lasted a few hours. I ended up leaving there with a sense that things weren't ever going to be 100% okay, but I knew that at least by keeping the stepmother at arm's length, I would be able to have a relationship with my dad, and he would be a part of my son's life. Well, things were okay until around this past July. I know that it is my own fault of not overlooking the abrasive and mean nature of the stepmother that I was raised with. Perhaps if I were able to do that, I would be able to see if she's actually a different person today. I would like to believe that people can improve. I know that I have grown a decent amount from the troubled teenager that I was. However, I also tend to think that this bitter middle-aged woman isn't exactly capable of changing her stripes. Getting back on track, my dad's response was different when things fell through in July. He seemed to be much more understanding of where I was coming from and why I just can't trust her. He even told me that he was trying not to end things with her over how she was treating my little brother, who was dealing with addiction in his early 20s. His whole tone was much different, and it gave me hope. He then proceeded to tell me that he was going to bring my mom with him to see our new home and see his grandson. The stepmother would not be coming, due to a lack of available PTO at work. He then told me that he did not believe that he would be married very much longer. Boy, did this give me hope. Things felt like they were turning around for the first time in 5 years, and I felt like we were going to establish something good between us. So mom and dad get to my house, which is crazy to me because I hadn't seen them get along or converse in the same room for most of my life. It was exciting and felt good to see. I had an air mattress set up for my dad in the basement, and my mom would be sleeping upstairs. Side note, I live in a bi-level home. You walk in from the garage into the basement. Mom and dad walk in, air mattress in plain view, and dad takes his bags upstairs and tell me that he and mom would be sharing a room and not to tell my siblings. I did not really know how to react and just said okay. In hindsight, of course, I should have told him that I was not comfortable with that. Nonetheless, the weekend is going pretty well. Everyone is happy and taking a ton of pictures with the baby. Mom and dad are having some alone time and talking a lot when the baby goes down for his naps. They're sitting close together on the couch, and when we watched a movie, which was really effing weird, as never had I really seen them be close or have any type of contact. And dad also has nothing good to say about the stepmother. The weekend ends with mom and dad packing up and leaving early in the morning so they can take the drive back home slow and via the scenic route. After they left, my wife told me about how uncomfortable some of that was for her, and that when she was taking care of our son in the middle of the night, she heard some of the extracurriculars coming from our guest bedroom. I'm not naive enough to believe that they would not be doing anything of the sorts, given the situation, but it still pissed me off a bit that my wife had to experience that when she was also not 100% comfortable with the situation. Another side note, mom is currently living with an on-again, off-again boyfriend. She was also very vulnerable, and I know that she still loves my dad. I viewed her as more of the victim, and that my dad knew that she would be willing to engage with him if he desired it. He did this with her a few years back when they were both married to other people. About a week and a half after they get back, I get a self-righteous text message from the stepmother. Classic move by her, by the way. Knowing that my dad planned on not being with her much longer and that I did not want anything to do with her, mixed with my anger toward her for things past and present, I lied into her. I have tried taking the high road with her in the past and not letting her know how much of a lowlife I view her to be. Well, 20 years of this pent-up frustration just came flowing out in about 15 seconds. I said very hurtful things and called her a lot of names. I really do not feel good about it whatsoever, but I also am not willing to offer an apology. As messy as it was, I believe that she will finally leave me alone for good. Well, my anger and rage spilled over, and I told my dad to tell her to leave me alone, believing we were on the same page with this, given our recent conversations. I felt safe saying this to him, and that he would understand where I was coming from. Guess who blocked me again? This just sent me into a state of rage and depression. He was again defending her and blocking me. I know that what I did was not right and that I was hurtful, but I really was pushed to my emotional limit with everything that happened. After about a month and a half, I am able to get a hold of him and ask if he wants to see us as we pass through his area on our way to see the in-laws for Christmas. He already told me he was not celebrating Christmas this year. He again tells me he isn't doing anything for Christmas. I asked if he just wanted to get lunch or anything to see his grandson, and he still declined. He then proceeds to tell me that he and the stepmother are remodeling the upstairs of their home and just got a new puppy, as if nothing has happened over the past 2 months. He has not offered any other context and not a single apology for anything that has happened in the past few years, even as I have come to his home multiple times with my hat in my hand, ready to patch things up. Well, now I am just so angry. I am hurt that he has again thrown this relationship to the side. I am hurt that he would come to my home and disrespect me in that manner. I want this relationship so much. I just don't know how else to say it. I can't believe that he used to visit with me in my home and have an affair and then just discard this relationship. I guess I can believe it. I just don't want to. I just want my dad back. I want my son to have his grandfather involved and to feel valued by him. I grew up without a grandfather, and my maternal grandfather died when my mom was young, and my paternal grandfather had a thing for kids. Sick duck. I have probably rambled enough. Maybe this just hits so hard right now because it is the holiday season, and I just wish that I was closer to family. Maybe it will just take time to heal this. But today, I really feel like I'm ready to cease all attempts to contact him. I'll be honest and say that some of it is out of bitterness. But more importantly, I feel like I need to start protecting myself from this emotional turmoil and definitely protect my son from it. My fear is that this will continue happening and that I will one day have to explain to a small child that his grandpa isn't going to be coming around anymore. It might be easier to just do it now, when he doesn't know any better. I know that I haven't offered much context to the things that the stepmother has done that have put me in the place that I am. The list is too long and too emotional for me to go through. I also did not feel that it would offer much context to the post either. There are a couple of things that scare me here. 1. There is a cycle in this family of cutting people out and pretending like they don't exist. I hate it so much and was raised with it. I have vowed that I want to break that cycle and raise my son in a loving and inclusive environment no matter what. I do not want to perpetuate the brokenness. 2. Mom told me that during their trip, my dad said that one of his biggest regrets in life was not taking his children's side when issues would arise. I don't want to do anything permanent when he has expressed regret and might come around to his senses. However, I am sick of the disposable nature of our relationship, and I feel done with it. Is there anyone who has experienced any similar situation where they felt like they were being emotionally toyed with and completely disposable by a parent? How did you deal with it? How did you deal with the pain of it? I get that you want to have a healthy and whole extended family, OP, but you can only do that with people who are willing to work towards health and wholeness. Your dad isn't willing to do that. He is married to an A, and he actively supports her A ways. He plays with your mother's emotions and with yours. He is not safe right now. I commend you on trying to see change. But I would make a hard boundary that until he divorces your aggressor and agrees to go to family therapy with you, he is not safe to be around, nor is he safe for your child to know. Some quick background. My baby brother was born terminally ill, and the long hospital stays and expensive meds kicked in around 6 months old. To cope with the huge medical bills, Mom worked some odd jobs over the years, including custom wedding and bridesmaids gowns. My mom had a few die-hard rules. Number 1, she did all of your measurements. I heard the lecture of vanity fibbing only results in a poorly fitting dress, more times than I can count. Number 2, all final fittings must be completed at least 3 weeks before the wedding. That way, if Dewey had an emergency hospital stay, she'd have time to arrange for someone to sit with him while she went home to finish a job. He was nonverbal and needed a constant companion. This particular bride wanted all of her bridesmaids in pastel organza dresses. Organza is a gauzy fabric. The base dresses were white, covered with these colors. Unfortunately, the bride had more bridesmaids than pastel shades the fabric came in, meaning one lucky bridesmaid wore tan. The bride refused to start a fight by assigning colors, so it was first come, first serve. When you came for measurements, you got to pick from the remaining colors. One bridesmaid lived 3 hours away and flat out refused to come to town to be measured. She insisted that telling us she was a size 8 was good enough. Bridal sizes are very different and didn't cleanly convert, so that meant nothing. Mom finally reached the compromise that a local seamstress could measure her and send in the measurements. 1 month before this wedding, Dewey was admitted into the ICU to be placed on a ventilator. Mom now had to find coverage enough to get 8 dresses finished off in the next 2 or so weeks. She pulled it off thanks to amazing friends, but it was tight. Dad was busy working overtime to pay the bills and dealing with us other 2 kids. Well, this witchy bridesmaid, BB from now on, still refused to have a final fitting more than 2 days before the wedding. She didn't want to waste a trip just because my mom was a horrible seamstress who didn't understand proper sizing. I was cleaning up seed pearls during the lovely conversation. My mom begged a friend to sit with Dewey for an entire day so she could do the fitting and adjustments all at once. BB was 2 hours late. When she arrived, she saw the hideous tan dress and began literally screaming about how it wasn't fair and my mom must have picked that color. She demanded another bridesmaid return their dress and both dresses get swapped colors. It would have been 20+ hours of work, so Mom laughed and told her that was a big no. The bride arrived and told her friend that color was the only option left, and she was sorry, but it was that or drop out of the wedding and pay for the dress anyways. BB finally agreed to put it on. Yeah, she'd lied about her size. When the zipper didn't go all the way up, Mom whipped out the measuring tape, only to discover this witch had shaved 1 to 2 inches off every measurement, except height. Her defense was that she wasn't going to let a jealous seamstress lie about her, so she fixed the numbers before passing them on. By this point, my mom was all but breathing fire. Her son's life hung in the balance, and this lunatic was making her life hell. My mom demanded double for the dress because she was going to have to add strips to the base white dress to make it big enough, then make a whole new overdress from organza. It was doubling the time and adding substantially to fabric costs. BB fought over it, and my mom finally told her, "Fine, pay me the agreed upon amount and take your dress as is." Vanity and not understanding measurements. Like, yeah, cutting a bit on the measurements might feel better if you are a person who gives a crap, but you don't take off much, so it shouldn't matter. Not thinking about or not understanding that a centimeter less would theoretically mean a 1 centimeter gap at the seam, which matters very much. Unless you plan on making a stripper dress where you bridge that gap with Velcro. In that case, hooks out, loops in, and it's gonna be scratchy as duck. Now the bride herself was bullying BB into just paying up. She finally agreed to it, and my mom told the bride to get BB out of her house. They could come back in 5 hours to get the dress. Thankfully, the redone dress was a perfect fit. BB paid the remaining balance and left after that,